Ever feel like you're living for someday?
Yeah.
Work hard now,
Huh.
and then maybe you can enjoy life later.
Yeah, I think we've all felt that way at some point.
Well, today we're going to be diving into some sources that challenge that whole idea.
I like it.
What if there's a way to design a fulfilling life now, not decades down the road?
Now that's something I think we can all get behind.
The source material calls it ditching the deferred life plan, and it argues that constantly delaying gratification can actually keep you stuck in a rut.
It's a pretty radical concept, right?
It is, and it makes you think.
It really does.
Have you ever heard the term new rich?
Yeah.
So what comes to mind when you hear that?
I mean, it's not about being a millionaire necessarily.
Okay.
The source material uses new rich to describe people who prioritize designing a fulfilling life now
Okay.
on their own terms.
I like that.
And get this, it suggests you might even make more money by working less but smarter,
Hold on. Working less but making more?
right?
That sounds almost too good to be true. How does that work?
Well, think about it. How much of your workday is spent on things that don't actually move the needle?
Yeah.
The source material is all about focusing on what truly matters and finding ways to automate or eliminate the rest.
Okay, so it's about being more efficient and strategic with your time.
Yeah.
But is this really realistic for the average person?
The sources are packed with stories of everyday people who've done exactly that.
Interesting.
Take Dale Bigsmith, for example. He actually built a successful business while training for the Olympics as a skier.
Wait, so he was running a business and competing at the highest level in his sport?
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It totally challenges the idea that you have to choose between pursuing your passions and having a successful career.
Exactly. And that's a key theme we see throughout the sources, rethinking traditional assumptions about work and life.
I like it.
And speaking of rethinking assumptions, let's talk about retirement.
Because when most people think of retirement, they picture themselves decades down the line, finally free to travel and enjoy life.
Yeah, finally get to do all the things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the source material suggests a totally different approach, right?
All right. What if instead of waiting until the end of your career, you could incorporate regular mini retirements into your life?
Mini retirements. What exactly does that look like?
Think of it as taking extended breaks, weeks or even months at a time,
Okay.
to travel, explore, and recharge. And the best part is you don't need to be a millionaire to do it.
Okay, so I'm picturing myself on a beach somewhere, sipping a tropical drink.
Sounds nice.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just lounging around.
You got the sources provide tons of real-world examples of people who've incorporated mini retirements into their lives, from backpacking through Southeast Asia to volunteering in South America.
Oh.
And they do it on a budget.
That's inspiring. It really challenges the notion that you have to be wealthy or wait until traditional retirement age to experience those kinds of adventures.
Exactly.
So you're telling me I can go backpacking through Southeast Asia right now?
Potentially, why not?
Well, I have this job, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners are probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah. And it busts the myth that having kids means putting your travel dreams on hold.
Okay.
There's this great example in the source material of a family that travels the world with their children, proving that kids can actually enrich the experience.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
So we've talked about ditching the deferred life plan and incorporating mini retirements. But let's be real, for a lot of people, the idea of quitting their job and jet-setting around the world probably sounds exciting but also terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. Fear is a major obstacle for many people when it comes to making big changes.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that.
But one of the key messages is that these fears often stem from our own limiting beliefs and assumptions.
So how do you overcome that fear?
Well, the sources introduce this really interesting technique called fear setting.
Fear setting.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
It's all about identifying and confronting the anxieties that are holding you back.
So instead of just trying to ignore your fears, you actually face them head on.
Exactly. And the sources provide practical strategies for doing that.
I like it.
One of the most powerful stories is about Hans, a lawyer who felt completely trapped in his high-pressure career. He actually ended up quitting his job and starting a surf company in Brazil.
Wow, that's quite a change.
It is.
I can only imagine the fear he must have felt making that kind of leap.
He definitely felt it, but what's fascinating is that he describes feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment that he never experienced in his old life.
Interesting.
He went from constant stress and anxiety to actually feeling a sense of purpose.
So his story is a powerful example of how facing your fears and taking a leap of faith can lead to a much more rewarding life than staying stuck in the status quo.
Absolutely. And it's not always about making radical changes. Sometimes it's about finding creative solutions that allow you to integrate your passions and values into your current work life. The sources also highlight examples of people who negotiated remote work arrangements or transitioned to more fulfilling careers without completely upending their lives.
That's really encouraging.
It is.
It means that this whole design your dream life thing, even just for a select few, it's something that anyone can work towards regardless of their current circumstances.
Absolutely.
But let's be honest, a lot of people probably hear all this and think, okay, but how can I afford to travel the world or take months off work?
Yeah.
Do I need to be rich to do that?
That's where the concept of the muse comes in.
The muse, what's that?
Think of it as an automated income stream that works for you even when you're off on a mini retirement surfing in Bali or volunteering in the Amazon.
Oh.
The sources suggest that building a successful muse isn't about getting lucky. It's about identifying a niche market, developing a product or service that solves a problem, and then finding ways to automate the entire process.
Okay, so it's about creating a business that basically runs itself. But doesn't that sound incredibly complicated?
Not necessarily. The sources break it down into manageable steps.
Okay.
In fact, there's this great story about a guy named Doug who created a wildly successful business selling sound effects online. And the amazing thing is his business practically runs itself.
Wait, sound effects?
Yep.
That's his muse? I love that it just goes to show that you don't need some groundbreaking invention or million-dollar idea to create a successful business.
Exactly. And Doug's story is a perfect example of how a simple idea, combined with the right systems and automation, can generate a sustainable income stream, freeing you up to pursue your passions.
This is all starting to paint a really compelling picture, Ditch. The deferred life plan, incorporate mini retirements, and build a muse that generates income while you're off living your best life.
Yeah.
It's like a recipe for freedom and fulfillment.
It really is, but we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to unpack when it comes to designing a life that truly aligns with your values and aspirations, and that's what we'll be diving into next. So we've talked about escaping the 9-to-5, designing a life you love.
Right.
But the how is just as important.
Yeah.
How do you actually build a business that works for you, not the other way around?
Right, because creating an automated business might sound intimidating at first, but the source material breaks it down into steps, and it's surprisingly approachable.
One of the key concepts is the remote control CEO.
The remote control CEO.
Someone who manages their business from anywhere in the world.
Okay.
Imagine running your company from a beach in Thailand or a cafe in Paris.
Okay, that image definitely appeals to my inner travel bug. But how do you actually manage a business from, say, a hammock in Bali?
Technology and outsourcing are your best friends here. Think about it. We have tools like video conferencing, project management software, and virtual assistants, all readily available and often surprisingly affordable.
So you're not tied to a physical office or even a specific time zone. You can literally manage your business from anywhere with an internet connection.
Exactly. And the sources are full of tips on how to make this work, from setting up systems for communication and task management to finding and managing reliable freelancers.
This is starting to sound less like a far-fetched dream and more like a real possibility. But there's another potential challenge that comes to mind.
Yeah.
What happens when you do escape the 9-to-5 grind?
Yeah.
There's a structure and routine that work provides, and for some people that can also provide a sense of purpose.
Right.
What happens when you take that away?
That's such a great point, and the sources acknowledge that potential pitfall.
Okay.
It's like you've achieved this freedom you've been dreaming of.
Yeah.
But then you're faced with this void.
Right.
What do you do with all this time and freedom?
Right. It's like that feeling you sometimes get after a big project ends, or even after a long vacation, a bit of emptiness, wondering what now.
Exactly. And that's why the sources emphasize the importance of finding new challenges and pursuits to fill that space. It's about replacing the structure and purpose that work once provided with things that truly light you up.
So it's not just about escaping the 9-to-5 for the sake of escaping. It's about creating a life that's filled with activities and pursuits that bring you joy and fulfillment.
Precisely. And that can look different for everyone. For some, it might be traveling the world and immersing themselves in new cultures. For others, it might be pursuing creative passions, starting a side hustle, volunteering for a cause they believe in, or simply spending more quality time with loved ones.
The source material is full of examples of people who found fulfillment in all sorts of ways. There's this story of a woman who quit her corporate job to open a bakery, a guy who finally had the time to write that novel he'd always dreamed of, and a couple who traveled the world teaching English as a foreign language.
What's so inspiring is that these stories demonstrate that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to finding fulfillment. It's
Mm.
about identifying what truly matters to you and then designing a life that reflects those values.
It's like that saying, the world is your oyster, but instead of just passively accepting that, you're actually taking the initiative to open that oyster and discover the pearl inside.
I love that analogy, and it highlights a really important point. This whole process of designing a fulfilling life isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing journey of exploration, experimentation, and growth.
So how do you even begin to figure out what that ideal life looks like?
That's where things get really interesting. The sources suggest a number of strategies for clarifying your values, identifying your passions, and defining your vision for the future.
So it's not just about blindly quitting your job and hoping for the best. There's actually a thoughtful process involved in figuring out what you want and how to get there.
Exactly. It's about taking a step back, reflecting on what truly matters to you, and then making conscious choices to create a life that aligns with those values.
And that can feel a bit overwhelming at first, right? Like, where do you even start?
One of the most powerful exercises the sources suggest is imagining your ideal day. Close your eyes and picture it. What time do you wake up? What do you do throughout the day? Who are you spending time with? What are you working on?
Okay, I'm doing it right now, and it's amazing how just visualizing that ideal day can bring so much clarity and motivation.
Right. It helps you get a tangible sense of what you're actually working towards. And then the key is to start taking small, consistent steps to turn that vision into reality.
I'm sensing a theme here. Small, consistent steps.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a recurring message throughout the sources.
It definitely is, because one of the biggest misconceptions about this whole design your dream life thing
Yeah.
is that it requires some massive overnight transformation.
Like you have to suddenly quit your job, sell all your belongings, and move to a tropical island.
Exactly. But the reality is, lasting change usually happens gradually through a series of small intentional choices and actions.
So it's less about making one big leap and more about taking a series of smaller steps that eventually lead you to your destination.
Precisely. And the sources offer tons of practical tips for making those small steps, from decluttering your life to automating your finances to negotiating a more flexible work arrangement.
So even if you're not ready to make a radical change right now, you can still start making small adjustments to your life that will gradually move you closer to your goals.
And that's incredibly empowering, isn't it? The idea that you have the power to shape your own destiny one small step at a time.
It really is.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, even if you're taking those small steps, there's still going to be challenges and setbacks along the way. You might encounter resistance from your boss, your family, or even your own internal doubts and fears.
Absolutely. And the sources address that head on, providing strategies for overcoming those obstacles. They emphasize the importance of clear communication, setting boundaries, and staying focused on your vision.
So it's not about pretending that the challenges don't exist, but rather about equipping yourself with the tools and mindset to navigate them effectively.
Right. And one of the most important things is to surround yourself with a supportive community.
Okay.
The sources highlight the power of connecting with like-minded individuals who are also on a similar journey.
Because let's face it, trying to make these kinds of changes can feel really isolating if you're doing it alone. But having a community of people who understand your struggles and aspirations can make all the difference.
It's like having a tribe of cheerleaders, mentors, and accountability partners all rolled into one. And the sources provide tips on how to find and connect with those people, whether it's through online forums, local meetup groups, or even just reaching out to friends and family who share your values.
That's so important because when you have a supportive community, those inevitable challenges and setbacks feel less daunting. You're not alone, and that can make all the difference in your ability to persevere.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important concept from the sources: the importance of celebrating your wins no matter how small.
Because it's easy to get so focused on the end goal that you forget to acknowledge and appreciate the progress you're making along the way.
Right. So whether it's finally decluttering your desk, negotiating a more flexible work schedule, or booking that flight for your first mini retirement, take the time to celebrate those milestones.
Because those small wins are what keep you motivated and inspired to keep moving forward.
And it's that forward momentum, that consistent effort over time that ultimately leads to the transformation you're seeking.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about ditching the deferred life plan, incorporating mini retirements, building a muse, finding new sources of purpose and fulfillment, overcoming challenges, and celebrating your wins. But there's one crucial piece of the puzzle that we haven't addressed yet.
And that's the financial aspect, because let's face it, money plays a big role in our ability to design the life we want.
Right, because even if you're not aiming to become a millionaire, you still need to have a solid financial foundation to support your dreams.
Exactly, and that's what we'll be diving into next. We'll explore the practical strategies and mindset shifts that can empower you to take control of your finances and create the financial freedom you need to live life on your own terms.
So we've talked about designing a life we love, filled with mini retirements, fueled by our own muse businesses.
It's a pretty exciting picture, isn't it?
It is, but let's be real, all of this requires a certain level of financial savvy, right?
You're absolutely right. It's one thing to dream about escaping the 9 to 5 and traveling the world, but those dreams can quickly turn into nightmares if you're not careful with your money.
Exactly. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we go from feeling trapped by our finances to feeling empowered to design a life that truly aligns with our values and aspirations?
Well, the sources offer some really interesting perspectives on money.
Okay.
It's not just about accumulating wealth, it's about using money as a tool to create the kind of life you want.
So it's less about getting rich and more about aligning your finances with your lifestyle goals.
Yeah.
I like that. But for a lot of people, just the thought of managing their money can be overwhelming.
Yeah. It can be a bit daunting.
Where do you even begin?
One of the first steps is to really understand where your money is going.
Okay.
The sources emphasize the importance of tracking your expenses and getting a clear picture of your income and spending habits.
It's like taking inventory of your financial life.
Exactly.
You can't really make informed decisions about your money if you don't know where it's going.
Exactly. And once you have that clear picture, you can start identifying areas where you might be able to cut back or save more. The sources suggest a number of strategies for reducing unnecessary expenses and increasing your savings rate.
So it's not necessarily about depriving yourself or living a life of austerity.
Right.
It's more about being mindful and intentional with your spending.
Right. It's about identifying what truly matters to you and then making sure your spending aligns with those values.
Okay, so we're tracking our expenses, cutting back where we can, and saving more. What's next?
Well, the sources also emphasize the importance of investing your money.
Okay.
It's not just about saving for a rainy day. It's about making your money work for you.
But investing can seem intimidating, especially if you're not familiar with the financial markets.
The sources acknowledge that, and they provide some great resources for beginners. There are tons of books, websites, and even apps that can help you learn the basics of investing and get started.
So it's not about becoming a Wall Street whiz overnight.
Right.
It's about taking the time to educate yourself and make informed decisions about your investments.
Exactly. And the key is to start small and gradually build your knowledge and confidence over time.
This all makes a lot of sense, but there's another aspect of financial freedom that I think is often overlooked, and that's the emotional side of money.
Oh, you're so right. Our relationship with money can be really complex, and it's often influenced by our upbringing, our experiences, and even our beliefs.
I know for me, talking about money used to feel really uncomfortable and stressful. It brought up all sorts of anxieties and insecurities.
That's incredibly common, and the sources acknowledge that our emotional baggage around money can actually sabotage our efforts to create financial freedom.
So how do you address those emotional blocks?
Well, one of the first steps is to simply become aware of them.
Okay.
What are your beliefs and attitudes about money? Where did those beliefs come from? Once you start to understand your money story, you can start to challenge and reframe those limiting beliefs.
It's like rewriting the narrative around money instead of seeing it as a source of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
You can start to see it as a tool for empowerment and possibility.
Exactly. And the sources suggest a number of techniques for shifting your mindset around money, from practicing gratitude to visualizing your financial goals to surrounding yourself with positive financial influences.
It's amazing how much our thoughts and beliefs can impact our reality, including our financial reality. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the practical side of designing a life that aligns with our values and aspirations. We've talked about mini retirements, but what if someone isn't quite ready to take weeks or months off at a time? Are there smaller steps they can take to incorporate more freedom and adventure into their lives?
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. There are tons of ways to inject more adventure and joy into your life, even if you're still working a traditional job.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, it could be as simple as taking a long weekend to explore a nearby city or national park,
Okay.
Or maybe you start incorporating more travel into your work trips, extending your stay by a few days to experience the local culture.
You could even try something like a workation where you work remotely from a different location for a week or two.
Exactly. And even if you can't physically travel, you can still expand your horizons by taking online courses, learning a new language, or simply trying new things in your own city.
The key is to be intentional about creating space for those experiences that bring you joy and fulfillment.
Right, because it's those experiences that make life worth living.
Right.
It's not just about working and paying bills, it's about creating memories, connecting with people, and making the most of this precious time we have.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from escaping the 9 to 5 to building a muse to taking control of our finances to finding new sources of purpose and fulfillment.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and I hope our listeners feel inspired and empowered to start designing a life that truly aligns with their values and
I
aspirations.
hope so too.
Because the key takeaway here is that it's not about waiting for some day. It's about taking action today, no matter how small.
You got it.
It's about making conscious choices, challenging limiting beliefs, and creating a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling.
And remember, the world is full of possibilities.
Yeah.
So go out there and explore, experiment, and create the life you've always dreamed of.
You'll be cheering you on every step of the way.